Okay.
Greetings and peace, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. Today, I have the honor and privilege of being joined by a great Masonic brother and a Masonic scholar who has been serving this brotherhood literally before I was even born. And I'm grateful for his presence, for his brotherly love, and gracing us with his presence. And the beauty of this is that in today's generation, especially my generation, the millennial and Generation X Masons, we're not taking enough time to learn from our brethren who have walked this path before. And I realized that just this past 2 years, I can count on my hand. It's between 5 and 10 brethren that are no longer here who have translated to the Grand Lodge above. There's been moments of regret in my heart that I wish that I could have spoken to them, gained their wisdom, and did something to spend time with them. And tomorrow is not promised to any of us. And I'm grateful to Brother Bob Uzzel for joining us. So please introduce yourself and tell us how is it that you came to be who you are today, starting from day one?
Well, I'm Bob Uzzel, full name Robert Leslie Uzzel, born May 22nd, 1951 in Waco, Texas. And I, as far as my involvement in Masonry, I was a DMLA when I was a teenager. My father was not a Mason, but after I turned 21, I petitioned the lodge and eventually got involved in it. And I was over the years, it's been an off and on thing with me. I've been involved in Texas on both sides of the Texas Masonic fence.
Hmm.
My I've been a minister of the gospel since I was 15 years old. Started out Southern Baptist, but have been with the African Methodist Episcopal Church since 1975. I've done a lot of study in different religions. My master's thesis in church state studies was on the Nation of Islam, the so
Hmm.
called black Muslims. My doctoral dissertation in world religions was on uh, Eliphas Levi and the Kabbalah, the uh, Jewish mystical tradition. I've been married to the same woman 44 years, and she's an African American. And at one time, the Grand Lodge of Texas had a real problem with me on that account.
Hmm.
I found open arms within the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas. I'm glad I've lived to see the day in which that barrier is coming down. Currently, there's, I understand, 7 Grand Lodges where Prince Hall still is not recognized. They're all in the South. I was encouraged last year when one of my heroes, Congressman John Lewis, passed away. He was a very active Prince Hall Mason and 33rd degree. And the White Grand Lodge Grand Master of Georgia, along with 2 of his officers, joined the Prince Hall Masons in doing the burial tribute for Brother Lewis. To me, it's very awesome. A man could bring people together while living, and even in his death, he still brings people together. I mean, that is really something, I think. So
Yes.
we need to come together. This uh, racism and sexism and religious bigotry is something that we should have no part of, and we need to try to bring people together. And that's what Masonry should be all about.
Yes, my brother, I agree with you completely. And I myself am somebody who has joined the Brotherhood at age 23, the first in my family to do so. And when I saw what Freemasonry was, when I saw myself with a Jewish worshipful master and with a all the aspects of different races and religions, that where else can you see this in the world where Muslims, Jews, Christians, white, black, Pakistani, it doesn't matter, where we can come together and love one another. And I saw how pivotal Freemasonry is, and especially today's world where you have relationships that are strained. There's a strain in jobs, society as a whole. There's a lot of chaos and division. And Freemasonry is needed in today's world where these values need to be espoused to help humanity, to uplift the fallen state of mankind. And it's truly great the work and the life that you have led, Brother Bob, in terms of the aspect of seeing unity, even in the Republic of Texas, yourself seeing both the Prince Hall side, the mainstream side, And I myself am somebody who has joined, I had left, and I had returned because I realized that if I had stayed on the outside, then who would be the one to bring in change, or who would be the one to actually fly that Masonic banner up high? Like you said, we need unity, and we need to end all these forms of discrimination that take place, to understand that you and I come from the same human family. We're in this together in our pursuit of knowledge, our understanding. And myself as a Muslim American, where I can leave behind a world where all people have a right to exist, no matter what their race or religion. Even the aspect of Freemasonry, Brother Bob, many don't know, even my home country, Pakistan, was a Masonic experiment, just like how America was in 1776, where at the end of the British Raj, they wanted to create a secular state for non-Hindus. So it's important how Freemasonry and Freemasons have shaped this modern world and the world that we see today in front of us. Many of them are very humble. They don't take credit for a lot of their achievements behind the scenes, but it's very important that we carry this tradition on. And you are that light of wisdom that I myself, as a younger Mason, I'm honored to be able to learn from you during this evening.
Well, being from that part of the world, you probably have heard or the story about that there may be some problems with it, but the British author Rudyard Kipling spent many years in India.
Yes.
He became a Freemason. Allegedly, he was entered by a Hindu,
Mhm.
passed by a Muslim, and
Yes,
raised by an Englishman.
that's
And
right.
he was interesting. You know, he's the one who wrote the poem "East and East, East is East and West is West." One of my church members, who is a
Mhm.
Masonic brother, was when Sean Connery died last year. He said, "Was he a Masonic brother?" It's my understanding he was not. But in the movie, A Man Who Would Be King, he played Rudyard Kipling, who was. You know,
Yes.
it's easy to get the actor confused with the person he portrays. Of course, a good actor definitely can internalize the role and
Yeah.
can, you know, even so, you know, he did a good job with that. But it's my understanding he was not a lodgeman.
Yes, sir. And the question I would like to ask you, Brother Bob, is in all of your years of experience in your life and the great life that you have led on a scholarly level, Masonic level, professional level, and on a personal level, what message would you give to somebody from my generation or the generations that will come after me in terms of preserving the Masonic Brotherhood, in terms of this direction that we're going, where everything is kind of that being transferred into like a digital world where you have all of these brother Masons from all over the world making their own channels from their own grand lodges, doing lectures. How do you see this fraternity and its values and where it's going within the next 10 to 20 years per se?
That's hard to say. I do see, you know, some with, you know, the internet has been a two-edged sword. You know that some good things have come out of it and some bad things.
Yes.
And some of these conspiracy theorists, they, the Masons, the Illuminati, and everybody else falls in right in the middle of it all. Of
Yeah.
course, Albert Pike is everybody's favorite whipping boy, but it's and that's very unfortunate. But the people at one time were saying Masons are going to rule the world. I wrote an article one time. I made the comment that with the decline in membership in recent years, that's unlikely to happen. Well, there's been some decline, but some places it's picking up.
Mm,
Uh, you got to be competitive. You got, you know, there was a time in which people before the age of television and before the age of the internet and everything else, lodges gave people something to do. But now they got so many other things that it's um, it's not. There's a lot of competition out there, and
yes.
what I want to devote my time to something like this, and it's a matter of showing that we have something to offer. I've heard, for example, some say they don't care to go to meetings because they're boring. Okay, there ought to be a way to make meetings interesting. You know, and some lodges have done some market research. One time I saw a video that was, and I can't remember who did this. The man who was in charge of it was not a Mason, but he was a professional as far as marketing was concerned. And he was trying to demonstrate how to market the fraternity to a wider audience. That's been many years ago. It's probably still available somehow, but I mean, someone had hired him for that purpose. And it's it's a matter of standing up for what you believe, and I've learned over the years of as I've gotten older, arguments are not good for one physically, psychologically, or spiritually.
Yes.
And it took me a long time to learn that. You know, you get yes, it is, no, it isn't, yes, it is, no, it isn't, and everybody leaves frustrated. There
Yes.
can be opportunity for dialogue, for expression of difference of opinion,
Mm.
but then there's so much misinformation out there, and it's just sometimes also, you know, the legends and myths, the more you deny them, the bigger they grow.
Yeah,
So that's what we have to deal with.
I
We got to
agree.
get correct information out there and try to promote it.
I agree completely. And as Masons, I think we've been taught that it falls on everybody on an individual level, that you have been given the tools to basically be the builder yourself. And that's what I did in terms of myself in the Islamic community. There was a lot of misconceptions about Freemasonry in the Islamic community, that it's tied to the Antichrist or it's tied to the end times in some ways. And I myself, as a Muslim Freemason, I made the effort to put videos out there. I put a book out there. I did speaking engagements to basically teach that you have more in common with the Freemasons than you do with anybody else in terms of your teachings and your lifestyle and everything in general. And because of that, I had several Muslim brethren from all parts of the world that emailed me saying that because of you, I petitioned my local lodge and Grand Lodge. But see, that's I'm not to be given credit for that, because the brotherhood teaches us that we're all one collective. So if one of us does something, that means all of us should get the credit for that. And that's the
You did
beauty
a
of this.
video. You did a video a while back, review of a book written by a friend of mine, Freemasonry, Ancient Egypt, and the Islamic Destiny.
Yes.
Mustafa El Amin. We were together in Washington, D.C. in 1987, which was a very productive dialogue we had. We were together 2 years later in Little Rock. And that's available on YouTube. I haven't looked at it because I was not, well, both Mustafa and I both have apologized to each other for what we said. We were both young
Yes.
and full of zeal at the time, and both of us overstated our case. And we now regret what we said. But you know, later on we have achieved a measure of understanding. I was too hard on his spiritual leader, Imam Muhammad Muhammad. But
Yes. Yes.
I certain it does bother me that in the Islamic community there's so much. Well, you drinking hot tea there?
Yes, I'm having hot tea and enjoying a great conversation with my brother.
Yeah, I'm drinking water, but I do like hot tea. Uh, but I should have fixed them earlier, but that's okay. Yeah, I like hot tea. Sometimes I like it sweetened with honey.
Yes, sir.
That's
If
good.
I ever come down to Texas in the future, because I have a brother that lives in the Fort Worth area,
Okay,
I would definitely come and we can have tea together at one of the local restaurants.
that sounds like a winner. Yeah, I've been Fort Worth. I I've been there many times over the years, and it's but back on track here.
Hmm.
The Nation of Islam was the subject of my dissertation while I was working my thesis back in the 70s, and uh, and you don't cover all your research in your thesis. You have to select and choose, and but in the background research, I came across references to the Moorish Science Temple.
Mm.
It became very obvious from the word go that there was a strong Masonic influence on Noble Drew Ali. And
Yes.
since then, I've written articles on both of those movements quite extensively. And I, um, and some of the Nation of Islam and others try to deny the Moorish influence,
mm,
but it was definitely there, and so was and there's the Masonic influence on the Moorish Science Temple was very profound. I want to show you a book right here. I don't know if you're familiar with this one or not. I read it several years ago. How the Arabian Nights Inspired the American Dream
yes, that's right.
from 1790 to 1935, and I have I listened again to a video I did a while back. When I was on the research committee for the Prince Hall Shriners, my friend and mentor, the late Joseph A. Walks Jr., we put together, he was the author of the book, and I was on the committee uh, on the history of the Prince Hall Shriners, pillar of Black society.
Mm,
And anyway, it came out in 1993 to mark the 100th anniversary of the foundation of the Prince Hall Shriners. And the legend is that John G. Jones and 13 other Black Masons were initiated at the World's Fair in Chicago.
yes,
You heard that story.
I heard about it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of problems with that story about who was this person, Rofelt Pasha, who allegedly initiated
Hmm.
John G. Jones. And but during that period of history, there was a lot of interest in the East and the Islamic traditions and many other things with the streets of Cairo, the belly dancers, as well as uh, I read a biography of a very interesting man named Alexander Russell Webb,
Yes.
and he was the second known American to convert to Islam.
Hmm.
I don't find any, I do not know if he was a Freemason or not. I know he was a member of the Knights of Pythias, another fraternal order.
You
So
know
I'm not,
what's interesting, Brother Bob, is that there is an aspect of two brother Masons that journeyed from the east to the west. One was Jamal al-Afghani, who's
yeah,
also referred to as the Old Man of the Mountain in many ways because of his mysterious nature. And it was his subordinate, Muhammad Abdu, who was a Juris scholar. And they had turned up in the winter of 1882 or 83. It was in the late 1800s when they showed up in Chicago, and they had taught the parents of Noble Drew Ali in terms of the mentorship. So that Masonic influence was there in terms of that teaching being passed on from those Masons from the East to Noble Drew Ali's parents and to him, and like, because they had this cycle that something was to come out of this.
mhm.
So there was a lot of Masonic influence there, and that's what Malcolm X, he realized when he journeyed from the west to the east to the holy city of Mecca. He realized that everybody here is on the level. They're all respecting each other. They all love each other. I was being taught to hate white people or to say that white people are the devil, which is false. He saw that everyone there, that vision that he wanted for humanity in terms of our Masonic principles, was right there in front of him. That
Mhm.
everyone, brethren, hand in hand, envisioning the world that people judged you by your character and your actions, not by what you look like or where you come from. And
Mhm.
that's the influence that I believe has carried on to this day. But again, we have to realize that anybody that's promoting division of any kind, they're promoting disunity of any kind, that's not from God. In all my time, I look into different philosophies and ways of life, because you have to realize that in each race, religion, country, and group in the world, you always have that internal struggle between the light and the dark. And anybody that's spreading unity and goodness, they are from God, the true source and true light. Anybody that's spreading disunity of any kind, we have to basically call it out. Even within my own community, I have done so, because it tells
Mhm.
you in the Holy Quran, in Surah 2, verse 62, that it doesn't matter if you're a Jew, Christian, or Muslim, as long as you believe in God and do the right thing. On the day of judgment, you shall have no fear of any kind. So that's the kind of world that I'm trying to leave behind, Brother Bob. And I'm glad that you have struggled in your life as well. And we have to make something come out of this endeavor, which I will also like to ask you with the next question is, if you were to pass something on to the next generation of Freemasonry in terms of the struggle and achievements that you have led, what would you pass on to them in terms of carrying on the fight, quote unquote?
Well, I I hope I live, or at least the next generation will see the complete acceptance of Prince Hall Masonry. If these other holdouts can fall in place, maybe I'll live to see it. If I don't, you probably will. And anyway, the um, and the idea of taking Masonry seriously as something, an academic study, is something people should learn about Masonic history, Masonic philosophy, Masonic ritual. It's more than just a place to go. I recently came across a term belly mason, someone who goes just to eat. Well, some people just go to join the lodge just to eat, some join the shrine just to drink, both of which are wrong.
Yes. And it's
But
interesting that most people don't realize how powerful this Masonic fraternity is. When I was in the process of basically leaving because I was disoriented, I was disappointed, and then I came back in, I experienced it in more than one country and jurisdiction. I realized that your average small town person in his lodge, his experience has not extended beyond his experience in the lodge. And everywhere I went in the world, there was always a helping hand available to me and to let me know that no matter what happens in my life, that I will never be alone in my life. And that's the most beautiful thing I think somebody can experience, knowing that you're loved and there's always somebody out there looking out for you and helping you on this journey.
well, does Masonry exist in Pakistan today?
It was the foundation of shaping its country from the 1800s up until 1972. And after 1972, it got exiled to the District Grand Lodge of Pakistan, which is now under the Grand Lodge of Pakistan. I mean, the Grand Lodge of Scotland, excuse me. So
Okay.
just like how you have the Grand Lodge of Iran that's here in America, exiled,
Is it
you
in
also
Los
have
Angeles?
the Pakistan District Grand Lodge that's under the aspect of Scotland. So I hope maybe in my lifetime I can fight to reverse that decision that they made in the 1970s to ban Freemasonry, because I have many who reach out to me from Pakistan, but again, I tell them that Masons respect the laws of the country that they inhibit. So in order for you to be a Mason, you have to be a resident of a country that allows it. But if you
Mhm.
want to help Freemasonry in Pakistan, is to fight against those laws that banned it and get it restored if you want to make a difference that way.
I really believe that Masons missed a golden opportunity to get the lodge restored in Egypt
Yes.
during the presidency of Anwar Sadat. Sadat was one of my heroes.
Hmm.
And you ever seen the movie about him starring Lou Gossett Jr.?
No, I haven't seen any movies about that.
Sadat is the name of it. And there were some race conscious Egyptians had a problem with a black man playing Sadat.
Hmm.
But Sadat could have gone into the African American community and blended in just fine. And but he was so pro-American, and of course he signed the peace treaty with Israel, and that was not the only reason for the assassination. I mean, there was other things involved too. But I believe that he would have been open to letting the masonry come back. To my knowledge, he himself was not a mason, but really believe we missed a great opportunity. I've corresponded with Masonic leaders in Turkey, and Turkey managed to, Masonry's managed to survive in Turkey for
Yes.
long. Although I understand the present government is trying to move in the other direction. But
Yeah, I agree completely. And I would also like to ask you, Brother Bob, in all of your years of scholarly work with Masonry in your professional life, in terms of Freemasonry, in the challenges that you have seen and the challenges that you have dealt against,
mhm.
what challenges do you see the next generation dealing with in terms of, I guess, preserving what this Masonic Brotherhood is in this time of chaos and division and where nobody wants to hear each other out?
Yeah, that you hear all kinds of conspiracy theories lately. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't recently uh, heard masonry tied in with any of the election overturn or anything like that. Maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't examined all of it, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody said the Masons were responsible for Trump's downfall. I have not heard that, but by the way, neither Trump nor Biden are Masons. So our
Yes.
last Masonic president was Gerald Ford,
Hmm.
and another man I greatly admire. And he was.
Yes.
There's one picture I have of I call it pipe diplomacy. Uh, Sadat and Ford were holding a summit, and both of them were smoking their pipes. And but Ford was a member of a lodge in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and also Saladin Shrine Temple. But
Yes.
anyway, I know I've chased a few rabbits here, but getting back to the present day with all the talk of Masons are easy to good scapegoats to anybody, and so we got to be on the alert against that.
Hmm.
And but again, the that challenge may get worse in the future. We need to continue to do good deeds in the community and continue to show support charities, support education, support things that are worthwhile,
Hmm.
and demonstrate that we're not about devil worship and all
Yes.
kinds of stuff that we're charged with. And
Yes.
and I guess you kept up last year with the forceful removal of Albert Pike statue in Washington D.C.
Yes, I remember that. I saw it on TV when it was happening.
Uh, I'm a fanatic on dates and anniversaries. I finished reading Morals and Dogma on the
Hmm.
19th of June, 1980, and the statue came down on the 19th of June of
Hmm.
2020. And it, of course, in my book, my doctoral dissertation, it was published in 2006, Eliphas Levi and the Kabbalah. I have the third chapter is
Hmm.
devoted to Pike and how he used the writings of Eliphas Levi. It needs revising because a lot of it's dated, but that's with any book over time it's going to become dated. But the um, but the idea that this bit about Lucifer as God, Pike being a Luciferian, that's been proven over and over again to be a forgery.
Yes.
And yet the anti-Masons keep bringing it up. Again, that's the lie that won't die. The more it's denied, the bigger it gets. And so that's just one of the realities we have to deal with.
I agree, Brother Bob, and I basically I support this endeavor completely that Freemasons of each community, you have to become a part of your community and show up at your schools, at your colleges, wherever your presence is required to let them know that this is who we are. We're here, we're a part of your community, just as how you are a part of our community. And this is very important, especially in this post 2020 COVID world where everything has been kind of been changed and life as we know it is not the same anymore in terms of many things that are going on in terms of people getting just to get to know each other. So I think Freemasons in each town go to your community town halls, tell people we're just average people like you trying to survive, take care of our families, trying to do the right thing and live by our principles, which I believe is needed, and that's how you ensure not just your survival but the survival of your community, because Masonic values and the survival of Freemasonry, Brother Bob, it's ultimately the ideals surviving in the hearts and minds of those who follow it, and that immortalizes the brotherhood because somehow some way your idea will continue to exist.
You were saying earlier about dropping out and seeing the need to get back in. I once suspended for non-payment of dues, and then about a year and a half later, I received a phone call from a man in El Paso. He's now deceased, but he said something to me that rang in my ears. He said, "We need guys like you on the inside, not on the outside." That was in late '79. In 1980, I decided to petition for reinstatement. I began running into opposition at that point, but that's another story. But anyway, I remember the late Alan Roberts, who was a Masonic historian from Virginia. He spoke at a Philaxis Society convention, and he got honorary fellow of the Philaxis Society. And he got permission from his Grand Lodge to do that. And someone asked him why he had to get permission. I never will forget what he said. What good would it do if I were to get kicked out of Masonry? I can't help you if I'm on the outside. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
And I've heard an analogy before that, sometimes you just got to wait for it to percolate.
Yeah.
If sometimes it's been said that, and I truly believe this, no army on earth can withstand the power of an idea whose time has come.
Yeah.
My favorite psychologist, Carl Gustav Jung, describes synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
And when things do come to pass at the right time, and sometimes we just have to wait and be patient. And sometimes it takes longer than we hope than we would like. But
I
in my
agree.
Christian tradition, those good things come to those who wait upon the Lord.
Yes, sir. And I agree completely, because even in my terms, when I was out and that 1 year gap that I had, I always knew that there's a reason why Freemasonry's teachings tell you to have faith and trust God, that everything eventually will fall in place on its own, that the grand architect of the universe is painting your life on the canvas with the good and bad, the black and white tiles, the yin and yang, balancing you out for the individual and the temple that you're meant to be, which really pleased me to come to that understanding of Freemasonry. And you're right. Those synchronicities do happen where the right people at the right time, at the right place, and you're always going to be where you're meant to be. And even in my life, that's a realization that I'm beginning to have as I end my 20s and I approach my 30s soon. And I realized that what future do I have ahead of me, and what responsibility can I take from those that have walked this path before me, and then I do my part, and so on, because we all have a part in reconstructing the temple, just like how we have in our own hearts, our own lives, dedication to our communities, our world. Everything is generally a work in progress. And I tell people that no situation or group in this world, Brother Bob, is perfect. And you have this aspect of light and dark that's happening everywhere. But as long as you stand by those true principles of the true Masonic values, then you can't let anybody demoralize you or run you out. Which also brings me, once you give your thoughts, it would give me to your next question, is that what do you think about Freemasonry in terms of those that will call you a brother in lodge, but online they're posting bigoted materials, or they're fighting with each other on these message boards and these Facebook groups, in terms of Masonic etiquette, to tell them that your
That
time
is
as a
totally
Freemason.
unmasonic to me.
Yes.
And I've seen two prominent Prince Hall Masons in the past
Mm-hmm.
who were very much at odds with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And would you believe I got caught right in the middle of it? The matter finally was resolved,
Right.
but I hated getting caught right in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the, yeah, and when different houses of masonry conflict with each other,
Mm-hmm.
some Grand Lodges suspend the shrine for this or that, or some have a problem with a particular Supreme Council, and that kind of conflict is not what masonry is all about.
Exactly.
And you do see it though. It's so unfortunate, and it's that kind of bigotry is not Masonic at all.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad that through your encouragement and your efforts and all the individual efforts of all of the brethren, that some change is being brought to the forefront in terms of Masonic unity, education, and understanding, which is what our brotherhood represents, that your time as a Mason is spent majority of the time outside of the lodge, where you espouse those values at your job, with your community, with your workplace. And it's your character that defines you. Like Brother George Washington said, that the greatest thing that I could have in this life is not being a president or a leader, but the title of an honest man.
And you were mentioning a while ago about like the yin and the yang, or something very familiar with that. I remember reading an article one time, actually, it the author, who was a very good friend of mine, did not understand the meaning of the yin and the yang. He was comparing Prince Hall Masonry to the non-Prince Hall black organizations,
Mm-hmm.
trying to denounce them as being bad. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there's some problems with the regularity and how they got started and all this kind of thing, but that's again, that's subject for a different podcast. But the idea he was presenting yin and yang is good and evil. And it's not that way at all. I mean, yeah, dark and light, masculine and feminine, positive and negative. These things are not contradictory; they're complementary.
Yes.
And so, you got to have one. Uh, they constitute a whole. You got to have both of them. Whereas if you take one is good and one is bad, you want to overcome the bad. Well, they're not good and bad, but they're complementary.
Yes,
A lot of
I thank you for that. I thank you for that because many of those scenarios, Brother Bob, people misunderstand or they polarize on purpose to create that division in the mind of those that are trying to understand true Freemasonry. And which takes me to my next question is, in all of your years for knowledge, for all the things that you did for the brotherhood, for yourself, for your community, for the world in general, in all of your years in Texas, seeing both sides of the fence, what lessons could you give to the next generation for those that are willing to listen to you?
Try to work together the best you can, and try, not just in masonry, but other things. Sometimes you say the right thing the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you stand for the right things, but the way you go about it lacks much to be desired and creates more harm than good. Try to avoid that at all together possible. Hindsight's 2020. But I wish we could do as well with foresight.
Yes, sir. And I thank you for that. And in terms of this direction that this country is going in the post 2020 world, and what I've seen, not just here in my area, but going around different areas, how do you see Freemasonry playing a role in terms of humanity's evolution, going from, I guess, one struggle to another, one generation to another, as each generation has their own struggles that they had dealt with?
I see masonry can serve a holistic purpose there. It's not political. And I know you have Democrats, Republicans, liberals, and conservatives, and
Mm,
in lodges, or sectarian religion and partisan politics is not supposed to be discussed during lodge meetings.
yes.
But some things that I'm seeing today, that it just doesn't make any sense to me, that people are putting politics above human life, or putting their religious faith. How any pastor can get up and preach against getting vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
How any governor like the one I'm under, who would penalize school districts for requiring masks.
Yes.
This is something we've got to defeat, this
Mm-hmm.
pandemic. And we need to put our political and religious differences aside. Some of those things we can take up later, but let's save lives. Let's get this thing behind us, and let's put this ahead of us. I hope the majority of Freemasons would agree and would be leaders in their community. Say, do what you need to do, get vaccinated, save lives, uh, and don't do things for your just it's crazy.
I agree, Brother Bob, and it's important because Freemasons are taught to be the leaders and examples to your community. And we're taught to respect the laws and be cheerful citizens of any country that you live in, whether it's America or anywhere else. And I do notice that here, even online, when I see those that are even in the Masonic community that are spreading misinformation, and those that are healthcare workers that are Masons, that are telling people do the right thing. And I see that divide, and I tell them that when you became a Mason, you chose to be a selfless individual where you choose to put the safety and happiness of others before yourself. And that's what you have to preserve is let's come together, put this pandemic behind us, and look forward to the future, see what the future brings for all of us, and be the better examples to our community and be the better examples to these children that are growing up today, where they would want to know. You make them wonder, who are you and what kind of character do you exemplify? It's ultimately, it's not about the ring or wearing a shirt or a hat that has the square and compass in it. It's ultimately, it's your heart. That's where you're made a Mason, and that's where you exemplify your character the most, is your character. And that's how, through those means, Brother Bob, is how I was able to change the hearts and minds of many in the Islamic community who had that Masonic Illuminati mindset, which I'm glad Almighty God will always place you at the right place to do those things.
They, you mentioned a while ago about the, Nation of Islam, all whites are devils. Well, of course,
Yeah.
Farrakhan still says that, but these others, well, Wallace D. Muhammad got away from that,
Mm,
but he used the term Jacobite, referring to the idea of Jacob in the Bible uh, as a usurper, supplanter, beating out Esau, birthright. Interestingly enough, I looked up in the Quran about references to Jacob, and every reference to Jacob is as a wise man and prophet.
yes.
And so he's has a very different view in the Quran, and but the I found the term Jacobite very offensive. And
Hmm.
I talked to Mustafa El Amin a while back. We disagreed, but we're still friends. And he said, we're not using that anymore. That was a transitional term.
Yes.
And by the way, there's a brother in Texas that I hope you'll be able to connect with at some point. We've been friends for 30 years, and he's uh, very active Prince Hall Freemason. He just got a grant for his African American Museum over in Waxahachie. His name
Yes.
is Jamal Rashid.
Hmm.
And anyway, he's written a few books, and he's still working. He's written a couple of them. He's working on another one now, but hope maybe get him on your program sometime.
Yeah, yeah, yes, sir. And in terms of Brother Bob, with your aspect of dealing with Freemasonry from both sides of the fence, as a white brother and as a white Mason, and you're dealing with the churches and Prince Hall and everything in terms of connecting with the African American community and the issues that the racial issues that we still see going on in America, what advice would you give to brother Masons in order to connect with their Prince Hall brothers, to be able to have that empathy and connection with them and their churches and their communities and families? Through your experience, what can you pass on to the next generation?
Well, I'm glad to see that my home lodge, Waco 92, has really opened up its doors. They have met with, they visited the Prince Hall Lodge recently, and Prince Hall Brethren have visited 92. They took the initiative. And so that would be, some Prince Hall Masons would be hesitant to try to do that. And I told the Prince Hall Worshipful Master a while back, as far as I really wouldn't think it'd be a good idea to just show up unannounced. It
Yeah,
would be idea to meet with the Worshipful Master and see if he's open to the idea of having a joint meeting sometime. You know,
of course,
and that
of
would
course.
be better to have it that way, and to you know, our recognitions have not occurred overnight. Some of them have been where they go to step one. Prince Hall is legitimate. It's not clandestine, but we're still not going to meet together. Then a few years down the road, well, we'll allow intervisitation under certain circumstances. Then eventually we'll let the local lodges decide. And so it's been a step by step process.
Yes,
But
I agree.
a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, and so we got to be patient. And but I do believe, since the Prince Hall Masons have been on the outside looking in, that members of the mainstream grad lodges should take the initiative when they can to reach out to the Prince Hall brethren, and let them know that hey, we're sorry for what happened, and we know we were wrong. So let's put that behind us.
Thank you, Brother Bob. And one last question I have for you in terms of giving your closing thoughts on tonight's interview, which will be watched by brethren all over the world. What message, let's say if today was your last day on earth, what message would you give to the Masonic Brotherhood in America, all over the world, to my generation, to future generations, for all of your years of struggle, success, happiness, tears, heartbreaks? What can you pass on to us that we can then pass on to the future? And this will be my final question to you.
3 words. Don't give up.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you
Don't
very
give up.
much. And also, where can those that want to support your work and your aspects of the books and things that you have published, where can they find it for those that wish to
Go on
purchase it?
Amazon. Let me, if that's okay, let me just, again, this is my book, Eliphas Levi and the Kabbalah, which my doctoral dissertation. This is my history of the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas. I have 2 other books that are not Masonic books. I'm sure there's some blues fans listening. Bland Lemon Jefferson was a blues singer from Wortham, Texas, and that particular musical type played a very important role in Americana. And my most recent book came out in 2015, The Durhams of Fairfield, an African-American genealogy. It's about my wife's family tree. It was inspired by Alex Haley's roots. Alex Haley, by the way, was a Prince Hall Mason. She's from Fairfield, Texas. I traced her roots to an African named Gabi, who was a slave in Fairfield County, South Carolina. He came with his, no, he died there, but his sons came to DeSoto Parish, Louisiana, and eventually to Fairfield, Texas, from one Fairfield to another.
That is
So,
absolutely wonderful. And to the audience that's listening to this, I will put all of the links to Brother Bob's works in the description below in the video. And we thank our beloved brother for his years of wisdom and the light that he has bestowed upon us as the generation that's going to have its own struggles and challenges. But look at the emphasis that he has taught us. Stay true to your Masonic values and never give up, and keep your trust in God and each other. So my eternal brotherly love to Brother Bob, and I hope to down the road to come and sit down with you and break bread with you in Fort Worth. And may God continue to bless you, sir, your family, and all that you hold near and dear to your heart, knowing that your message was passed on to the next generation.
same to you.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.